It was a quiet night in the heart of Medjugorje. Silence enveloped the hills, and the wind barely whispered through the trees, as if even nature itself was waiting for something. It was 3:33 a.m. when it happened. A flash, at first faint and then blinding, lit up the sky with a supernatural brilliance. It wasn't lightning, it wasn't a comet, it was something else. The few residents who were awake at the time ran out of their houses in confusion. An elderly woman, known in the village as Doña Milena, fell to her knees when she saw the light and began to cry uncontrollably. "It's not the first time I've seen it," she said through tears. "That light also appeared before the war, and then before my husband died. It always portends something. But this time, the light didn't come alone. As it dissipated, it left a faint glow in the sky, as if a white figure had been suspended for a few seconds, barely perceptible to the physical eye, but deeply recognizable to the soul. Those who witnessed the phenomenon assure us it wasn't an optical illusion. It was a presence. It was her. From then on, the testimonies began to multiply. Some claimed to have seen a female silhouette with a crown of stars. Others heard a soft chant, like thousands of voices in celestial harmony. But there was one thing they all agreed on: a feeling of immense peace, mixed with a silent warning that made their skin crawl. The most striking thing is that this event wasn't isolated. Almost simultaneously, people around the world shared similar visions. Lights in the sky, white figures among the clouds, messages received in dreams, and a growing restlessness in their hearts. They weren't front-page news. They didn't appear on major television channels, but they circulated like a sacred whisper among those with open hearts. Could it be that the Virgin Mary is preparing humanity for something great? Are we being warned once again, as at Fatima, as at Lourdes, as in so many other apparitions throughout history? And why does this time seem so urgent? One of the Medjugorje visionaries, whose name will not be revealed out of respect for her privacy, said that during one of her prayers, Our Lady showed her a dark sky that opened like a veil. "I saw a kind of moving map. It was as if places were being revealed to me where there would be great pain, but I also saw refuges of light, homes of prayer, humble people protected by Mary's mantle." She wasn't the only one. Other people, unrelated to each other, began to describe similar dreams. A woman in Mexico recounted a dream of a white dove flying over a large city before an earthquake struck. In Argentina, a young man who knew little about apparitions woke up in tears after dreaming that an angel told him, "Get ready, because heaven will speak." These aren't scary stories. They're calls. They're whispers from heaven to those who can still hear. And perhaps you, who are watching this video, are one of those who have felt that restlessness in your soul lately. Maybe you can't explain why, but there's something in your spirit that tells you we're approaching a pivotal moment in human history. And this is where the great revelation begins. Because that light in the sky wasn't just a sign, it was the first announcement of something that will transform everything we know. Modern prophets have called it the great event, others simply the warning. But what few know is that it is already underway. Some ask, but when will it happen? Not knowing that in reality it has already begun. It began in the hearts of those who feel a deep calling to return to God. It began in the inexplicable movements of nature, in the spiritual awakening of thousands of older people who, suddenly, are feeling they have a mission: to intercede, pray, and protect their families with the power of faith. And while science searches for explanations, while the news ignores the obvious, while the daily routine lulls the masses, there is a remnant that is awakening, and they are not alone. Because every time the world falters, the Mother appears, like a silent sentinel, like a beacon in the midst of darkness. But what exactly did she reveal to the visionaries after that sign in the sky? Which places in the world are designated for natural purification? And what is the true role of those who hear her voice at this time? Don't go away, because what you are about to discover will change the way you see reality. What Our Lady showed you is deeper, more urgent, and more hopeful than you can imagine. And now that you've seen the sign, you are ready to hear the message. That night, marked by the light in the sky, didn't end with the amazement of the inhabitants of Medjugorje. It was only the beginning, because while many tried to fall asleep under the impression of what they had witnessed, others simply couldn't sleep. Something in the air changed, something invisible but deeply perceptible to sensitive hearts. One of the visionaries, whose identity has remained protected for years out of respect for her mission, received a visit. It wasn't a passing vision. It wasn't a dream. It was a living apparition. At 4:12 a.m., according to her testimony, her room was filled with a golden white light, as if the sun had gently entered through the window, without heat, without noise, only a shuddering peace. She was there, standing, dressed in white. Her face was serene, but her eyes reflected a profound sadness, as if she carried within them the weight of humanity's suffering. The Virgin Mary did not speak immediately. First, she extended her hands toward the visionary, and with indescribable tenderness she enveloped her in a spiritual embrace that can only be understood by those who have felt the touch of heaven. And then he spoke. "My little daughter, time has begun to turn faster. The heart of the world is wounded, and creation groans. The Father allows his justice to be revealed, but there is still hope. There are still souls who listen, and you are one of them." And the seer, unable to contain her tears, could barely manage a word. But what came next was even more shocking. A great natural event is approaching, and it is not punishment. It is purification. Many will not understand. Others will mock. But you will say what I show you, because my voice must reach the corners where fear reigns, where faith has been extinguished, where hearts are asleep. The Virgin Mary revealed that certain places in the world are spiritually contaminated, not by the land itself, but by human actions that have wounded its sanctity, cities that have expelled God from their decisions, entire nations that have forgotten the principles of life, respect, purity, and prayer, places where the innocent are silenced and darkness is celebrated as freedom. Where there is no prayer, there is emptiness. And where there is emptiness, confusion sets in, Ella said in a firm but loving voice. The enemy has set traps in the minds of men. Many believe they are moving forward, but they are walking toward the abyss. That is why heaven will intervene, because there is still time, but it is dwindling. The visionary fearfully asked her where these places were, but the Virgin didn't answer directly. Instead, she pointed to a spiritual map floating in the air. It wasn't an ordinary map. It was like a vision of the earth, where certain points shone with intense light, and others, however, were covered in thick shadow. The Virgin continued. The places where the rosary is still prayed with devotion, where the elderly teach the young to bless the table, where mothers teach their children to cross themselves before going to sleep, those places will be under my mantle. And then he added something that shook the seer to her soul. But where laughter has become mockery, where music does not uplift but drags, where the image of my son is ridiculed, there the shaking will begin. The most striking thing was the tenderness with which Mary spoke of those who will suffer, not with condemnation, but with a mother's pain. Many will weep, but in their tears I will sow seeds of conversion, because even in pain I do not abandon them. I am with them. I am always. The apparition lasted just over 9 minutes. When it ended, the light disappeared, leaving no shadow. But the visionary's heart burned like a living flame. She rushed to write down what she had heard, not to publish it, not to make a spectacle of it, but to faithfully remember every word, as Mary did when the angel first spoke to her in Nazareth. And it is thanks to her faithfulness that we can know this message today, because it wasn't given just for her, it was given for you, for me, for all who still believe that heaven is not silent, while many remain unaware while others sleep. A part of humanity is being awakened by the gentle voice of a mother who never gives up. A mother who still awaits the return of her children. Perhaps you, who are listening to this, feel that this is no coincidence. That there is something in this message that speaks to your soul. Something that makes you think about your family, your decisions, what truly matters. And yes, there's more. Because the apparition didn't just reveal words. It revealed concrete signs, specific places, events that are about to occur. And most astonishing, a final promise that will forever change the destiny of those who receive it with faith. Which cities are in danger? What natural events will sweep through those regions? And what does it take to be among those protected? In the next chapter, I will reveal to you what the map showed and why certain places shone with light and others were covered in shadow. Prepare yourself. Heaven continues speaking. Are you willing to listen? The vision continued in the following days, not in the form of a direct apparition like the previous one, but in small fragments that the visionary began to receive during her moments of deep prayer. It was as if heaven didn't want to overwhelm her all at once, but rather to gradually reveal what needed to be conveyed. And so, one silent dawn, while praying the rosary on her knees, she saw it again, the spiritual map that Mary had shown her floating in the air. This time, with greater clarity, it wasn't a political map. It had no borders, no country names. It was more like a living representation of the planet, with moving mountains, churning waters, and areas that pulsed as if alive. And then the patches of shadow appeared. They weren't static. They were like dark mists that concentrated in certain areas, moving slowly but powerfully. Maria didn't mention exact names, but the visionary, guided by an inner understanding impossible to explain in words, immediately knew what they represented. Places that vibrated with density, entire cities marked by spiritual abandonment, regions racked with violence, idolatry of money, attacks on life, and contempt for the sacred. One by one, he identified them. In his notebook, he wrote with tears in his eyes, "A coastal city where tourism has replaced faith, filled with excess, where ancient churches now lie empty, converted into museums or silent ruins. A northern metropolis where laws protect what offends God, and where the life of the unborn is discarded as if it had no value. A colorful and festive tropical island where dark forces have been invoked under the guise of tradition. A fertile valley in the south of the continent, where spiritual hunger is greater than the hunger for bread. The shadow over these places wasn't a punishment. It was a warning, a wake-up call, because there's still hope, there's still time to change. But the purification is approaching like a storm that can't be stopped, only prepared for." Alongside the shadows, the visionary also saw bright areas. Small points of intense light, like living flames in the darkness. They were homes of prayer. Small groups of people gathered in sincere faith, humble churches where people still pray from the heart, families where the mother still blesses her children before bed, elderly people offering their pain for the salvation of others. One of those points shone brightly over a small mountain village, where every night a group of elderly women pray the rosary without fail. Another shone brightly in a corner of the city, in the modest apartment of a grandmother who dedicates her time to praying for her lost grandchildren. Yet another shone brightly over a poor church, where an elderly priest still celebrates Mass with tears in his eyes. Mary said to the visionary, "These places will be my refuges. There I will send my angels. There the earth will shake less violently. There my children will find comfort." But he added with pain, "Many of those in the shadows don't know it. They haven't heard. They haven't been warned. What if you were the only voice that could reach them?" That's why this message cannot remain silent, because the purification is approaching as a great natural event, not created by man, but permitted by heaven to awaken a sleeping humanity. The seer saw symbolic scenes. A large wave covered a coastal town, but stopped just before reaching a chapel where a candle remained lit. An earth that opened up, but a praying family fell to its knees and remained unharmed while everything trembled around them. A fire descended from the sky, but was diverted by a white cloud surrounding a school where children were praying to the Virgin. These aren't cinematic predictions, they're signs. And in each one, Maria remembered the essential point. The power of prayer changes the course of events. So what determines whether a place will be swept or protected? It's not wealth, it's not technology, it's not political power, it's faith, it's prayer, it's humility of the heart. The places marked for purification were not chosen at random. They reflect the spiritual battle waged in silence. And every soul that converts, every rosary recited with love, every act of reparation, can illuminate another point on the map. Dear brother, dear sister, have you ever wondered if your city is under light or shadow? Is your home a refuge or an exposed field? This is not the time to be afraid. It's the time to wake up, because now that we know there's a map, we also have a mission. Let us become light. Let us ignite faith. Let us be part of the invisible shield that Mary is raising over the earth. And there's more, because what comes next is what you least expect, the story of the witnesses to the mystery. Ordinary people who, unwittingly, witnessed inexplicable moments. Their stories will shake your soul and show you that heaven is truly already acting. Do you want to know what they saw? Do you want to hear their voices, their tears, their promises? So stay. The most shocking part is about to begin. After the apparition and revelation of the spiritual map, news began to circulate among the faithful of Medjugorje like a fire that couldn't be extinguished. But these weren't ordinary news. They were testimonies, accounts from people who, without seeking it, were direct witnesses of something that defies all human logic. They weren't theologians, they weren't experts, they weren't religious leaders. They were ordinary people, devout grandmothers, silent peasants, young people far from the faith who were surprised by the divine. And their words weren't shouted, they were whispered with tears. One of the most moving testimonies came from a man named Stjepan, a 67-year-old farmer who had never spoken in public. He had worked the land all his life, a simple man with worn hands and a humble gaze. He couldn't read well, and he barely used an old rosary his mother had left him. But it was he who one night felt compelled to climb Apparition Hill for no apparent reason. He told it like this: "I climbed without knowing why. I carried a restlessness in my heart. The sky was clear, cloudless, and when I reached the summit, I sat down to pray. That's when I saw him, the figure of a woman dressed in white with a light that didn't hurt my eyes, but it did hurt my soul. She didn't speak to me in words, but I understood everything. I felt her sadness. I felt her urgency, and I saw myself, small, a sinner, forgotten by prayer. I fell to my knees and cried like a child. Since that night, I pray every day for those who don't believe." The shocking thing is that same night in another country, thousands of miles away, a woman named Esperanza, a 72-year-old Dominican grandmother, dreamed of a white-bearded man kneeling under a heavenly light and heard in her dream, "His tears save nations." How can this be explained? Coincidence, illusion, or the same spirit moving in different hearts to alert us? Another deeply moving case was that of Michaela, a young Argentinian woman who had completely abandoned her faith. After losing her mother, she fell into a deep depression. She claimed to believe in nothing. But one morning, just after watching an interview about the apparitions of Medjugorje, she had a clear, vivid dream. She dreamed of a field of completely wilted flowers. She walked barefoot and sad. Suddenly, a woman dressed in blue appeared and offered her a rosary. When Michaela took it, the flowers began to revive one by one. When she woke up, her pillow was soaked with tears, and that morning, for the first time in years, she looked for a church. I can't explain what happened. I just know that something changed inside me. It wasn't an emotion. It was a certainty. It was her. She came looking for me, Can you feel what's happening? Do you realize this isn't a fairy tale? These stories aren't made up. They're signs, little echoes from heaven that resonate in hearts willing to listen. And the most impressive thing is that they're becoming more frequent. They're happening right now as you watch this video. There are silent witnesses on every continent. An 8-year-old boy claims to have seen a lady with stars just before an earthquake hit his town. An elderly priest who smelled roses in the middle of the night just after offering a mass for forgotten souls. A nurse who, in the middle of a hospital room, heard a voice telling her, "Take care of their bodies. I take care of their souls." None of them were seeking notoriety. None of them asked to be heard. They just experienced something that transformed them, and you could be next. Yes, you. Because if you are here, seeing this, hearing these words, it is no coincidence. Maybe you haven't seen an apparition, maybe you haven't heard a voice, but there is something in your heart that vibrates, that moves, that trembles, and that is also a sign. This is how the Virgin Mary is working in this time, not from the spectacle, not from the massive, but from the intimate, from the silence of the soul. And while the media focuses on wars, scandals, and figures, there is an invisible revolution taking place. A silent generation of older people are returning to prayer. They are lighting candles in the early morning. They are opening their homes to hold prayer gatherings. They are teaching their grandchildren to cross themselves, as their grandmothers did, because she said so. Victory will come from below, from the humble, from those who have no power but have faith. And now you know what many still don't know, that there are witnesses to the mystery among us, that there are small but real miracles, and that the battle between light and shadow has already begun. But fear not, because in the next chapter you'll discover the secret of time, the clock in the sky that's ticking, and what it really means when Our Lady says, "Time is running out." Is the end closer than we imagine, or is it just the beginning of a new purification? The answer could change your destiny. From the first days of the apparitions in Medjugorje, a phrase began to be repeated among those who listened attentively to Our Lady's words. The time given to you is coming to an end. At first, many thought it was a symbolic warning, a poetic invitation to conversion. But as the messages intensified, it became clear that heaven was speaking of a real clock. Not a clock like the one on the wall, not a human calendar, but a spiritual clock, a divine countdown, a limit marked not by dates but by the state of souls. Have you ever felt like time is passing faster than before? Have you noticed how the years seem to compress, how the days fade away, how children grow in a breath? It's not just a personal perception. It's something many older adults are feeling, especially those who pray. The world is running. But to what? The Virgin explained that humanity has received a special period of mercy, a time granted by the Eternal Father, thanks to the intercession of his mother, a time to return, to awaken, to return to the heart. But that time will not last forever. In one of the confidential messages, the Virgin said to a visionary, "Heaven's clock has begun to tick. Every soul that departs makes the sand descend faster, but every soul that converts halts the passage of judgment for a moment." Imagine a large celestial hourglass. Every sincere prayer, every act of charity, every rosary recited with love delays judgment. But every offense, every rejection of the light, every willful denial of God's love hastens its arrival. It's not about fear, it's about awareness. It is about spiritual responsibility. Humanity has believed that it has control over time, that it can manipulate destiny with technology, with science, with laws. But the soul does not obey human clocks. And while the world celebrates progress and advancement, the signs from heaven multiply. Nature responds. Extreme weather, sudden disasters, animals changing their behavior, seasons no longer following their usual course. Humanity is divided. Fractured families, increasing violence, growing indifference to the pain of others. Spirituality grows cold, empty churches, hurried prayers, superficial faith. All of this is a sign from the divine clock. And when that clock strikes its final hour, nothing will ever be the same again. But there is hope here. The Virgin has not failed to warn precisely because there is still time. There are still precious seconds to act. There are still souls who can change the course of their destiny and the entire world. In a recent vision, one of the seers saw an antique clock floating above the earth. Its hands spun faster and faster, as if desperate. But beside the clock, a woman dressed in white held a lit rosary. Each time a person prayed, a spark would fly from the rosary and touch the clock, causing the hands to stop briefly. Do you understand the power in your hands? Every prayer of yours, every Hail Mary prayed from the heart, is not a drop in the ocean. It is a spark of light that can stop what is coming. And Mary insists, don't wait for greater signs. Don't wait for the heavens to open or for the mountains to cry out. I'm already speaking, I am touching hearts, I am awakening consciences. He who has ears, let him listen. Maybe that's why you're here. Perhaps that's why you felt that uneasiness when you read the title of this video. Perhaps the Holy Spirit brought you, not out of curiosity, but by destiny, because if you react now, if you decide today to live as if the clock were marking the last minute, you will not only change your life, but you will save many more. Time is not measured in hours. It is measured in conversions, and the clock in the sky is waiting for your answer. But how do you know if you'll be among those protected when that clock strikes? Are there people who are already under a divine shield, untouchable despite the impending chaos? Yes, and they are called the chosen ones of silence. They're not famous, they don't make noise, they don't seek recognition, but they've been preparing for this time for years. Do you want to know who they are, and how you too can be part of them? Then don't go, because the next chapter will reveal to you the most sacred secret that has been hidden from the eyes of the world. There is something that human eyes cannot see, but heaven clearly observes, the hidden heart. At a time when the world is exposed, shouted about, displayed on social media, and consumed at top speed, heaven has chosen to act silently. And no, he hasn't chosen the big ones. He has not chosen the influential, the experts, the powerful. He has chosen those who many no longer see, to those who pray without cameras, to those who serve without applause, to those who love from the humblest corner of the house. To them, the Virgin calls them, my chosen ones of silence. They are men and women who have lived a simple life for years. Some are retired, others are suffering from illness, others are lonely. But all have one thing in common, a deep inner life. A connection with God that requires no loud words, no imposing temples, no recognition. A pure faith, a silent fidelity, and that is why they will be protected, not by human merit, not for spectacular works, but because in their humility they have built a spiritual refuge in their soul. One of the most moving messages one of the psychics received said, "Many ask who will be saved, who will be protected. I tell them it will be those who have not stopped loving. Those who still bend their knees, those who call me mother without tiring." Mary showed in a vision a simple house in the middle of a city. On the outside, it was like any other, but inside, it shone like a beacon. Why? Because every morning, the old woman who lived there prayed the entire rosary, lit a candle for her children, and offered her solitude for the sick of the world. Nobody knew, but heaven does. And on the spiritual map, that house was a refuge. A man was also shown who, after a hard and indifferent life, had quietly reconciled with God. No one knew that every night he wept in his room, asking for forgiveness for his mistakes. But the Virgin saw him, and he said, He will be one of those who will not be touched by the storm. The chosen ones of silence are everywhere. They don't have a uniform, they don't make speeches, they do not seek recognition, but they have a secret mission: to intercede for the world. Some of them are your neighbors, others are people who have crossed your life without you realizing it. And maybe you too are being called to be one of them. Do you feel like you have no strength? That you're no longer as useful as you once were? Does your body age, but your soul remains alive? So listen carefully. Heaven still counts on you. You can be one of the living shields of your city. You can be light in the midst of this growing darkness. For when the purification comes, when the winds blow harder, when the earth shakes and hearts tremble, it will be the chosen ones of silence who will sustain the world. And they won't do it with power, not even with weapons, not even with speeches. They will do it with prayer, with love, with fidelity. An old priest once said, "The world still turns thanks to prayers that no one sees." And he was right. Because every rosary prayed at dawn, every tear offered in silence, every act of hidden forgiveness, every hand extended without witnesses, counts. Okay, ways in heaven. In the days to come, the chosen ones of silence will shine brighter than gold. They will be like invisible torches that will protect entire homes, and when chaos knocks at the door, your inner peace will be stronger than any fear. Dear brother, dear sister, you too can be one of them. You don't need to change your name. You don't need to move somewhere else. You just need to open your heart and say, "Mother, here I am," because she is searching. She is calling, and perhaps, as you listen to this, your soul has already responded without words. But there is still something else, something that will help you understand where to seek refuge when everything is moving. Real places, where the presence of the Virgin will manifest itself with power. Places that have already been marked by heaven, and that you are now about to learn about. Are you ready to discover the refuges she revealed? Then stay, because the next chapter could show you your next destination. After speaking of the chosen ones of silence, the Virgin began to show what many have longed to know for decades: the spiritual refuges that will be preserved during the great purification. But attention, these shelters are not bunkers, they are not inaccessible mountains, they are not human constructions. They are sacred spaces marked by prayer, faith, humility, and the presence of Mary. Places where, when everything else trembles, the heart will find peace. Where evil cannot touch. Where the mother's mantle will be an invisible wall and a royal shield. One of the visionaries said, with a trembling voice, "I saw a web of light over the world, like dots connected by golden threads. Each dot was a place of authentic prayer. Small, hidden places despised by the world, but glorious in heaven's sight." And he added, "The Virgin showed me some of them, not all of them, only those that needed to be revealed now." One of those points was on Križevak Mountain in Medjugorje, where thousands climb carrying crosses, praying with tears. Another in a nearly forgotten monastery on the outskirts of Quito, Ecuador, where cloistered nuns pray day and night without ceasing. Another one in a poor community in Mexico where entire families pray the rosary at sunset, every day without fail, guided by an elderly woman who can barely walk. A wooden cabin was also seen in the Chilean Andes, where a man has been praying alone for 40 years, after losing his wife and promising the Virgin that he would pray for abandoned souls until his last breath. Can you imagine it? Shelters without luxury, without walls, no advertising, but with an indestructible spiritual strength. Maria explained that these places are not chosen by geography. They are chosen by faith, for true love, for total surrender. She said, "Where prayer is sincere, where I am called upon with love, I will be there, even if there are no walls, even if there is no roof. If there is faith, there will be protection." And then the message was clear. Shelter is not just a physical place, it is a state of mind. A heart consecrated to Mary is a refuge in itself. A house that lives in prayer is a sanctuary. A family that prays together is a fortress that the enemy cannot penetrate. But there are also physical spaces that have been especially marked, and the Virgin is activating them little by little. Some signs to recognize a shelter, places where there is inexplicable peace, where children feel safe when they enter, where there are blessed images of the Virgin that have never been desecrated, where love is breathed, where sick people find comfort, where animals are not disturbed by the spiritual presence, where forgiveness has been given, where there is reconciliation, and you can consecrate your own home as a refuge. She said it. Prepare your house with prayer. Place blessed images. Consecrate your door. Pray aloud. Make your home a place where I can stay. Do you understand? You don't need to wait for a prophet to come and point you to a place. You can create one now. You can transform your home into a sacred refuge, a point of light on the celestial map. And if you do it with faith, when the time comes, you will be protected. But there is something else. The Virgin revealed that, in the darkest moment, some will be mysteriously guided to prepared shelters, through dreams, through strong intuitions, through angels. True stories have already begun. A woman in Colombia dreamed of a dirt road she'd never seen before. Days later, while fleeing a conflict zone, she found exactly that path, and eventually a house where she was welcomed by a family praying the rosary. A boy in Peru told his grandmother that the lady in the blue cloak showed him where to hide if noises came from the sky. A young man in Brazil was guided by an inner force to a prayer community he'd never been to before, just as his neighborhood was struck by a natural disaster. Coincidences? No, they are answers. The Virgin is already acting. The shelters are already being activated. He's already scoring hearts, and you are receiving this information because you are also called to be part of that protection network. But there is still a crucial question. How should we prepare ourselves internally for the moment of great purification? What is the true armor of the soul? How can we live so that nothing and no one can steal our peace? What comes next is deeper, more revealing, and it is perhaps the most important step in this entire message. So far, we've talked about signs in the sky, hidden maps, prophetic apparitions, and sacred refuges. But none of that would be of any use if we don't understand where real protection lies, because when the wind of purification blows, when the earth shakes, when human structures collapse, there will only be one thing that will truly keep us standing: the state of our soul. And that is why the Virgin, in many of her messages, has repeated again and again, prepare yourselves, not on the outside, but on the inside. Because the soul is like a city. A city can have strong walls, but if inside there is division, weakness, and pride, it will fall. On the other hand, a humble, small, but united and vigilant city will resist any attack. So is your heart. And this is where we enter into one of the deepest secrets revealed by Mary. There is an invisible weapon that makes the soul untouchable, a shield that no enemy can pierce, a perfume that attracts angels and drives away demons, a fire that does not burn but purifies. And that shield is inner preparation, in a world that shouts, that judges, that is filled with noise and opinions. The soul that learns to be silent becomes impenetrable. The Virgin said, "He who knows how to silence his heart will know how to hear my voice in the storm." This doesn't mean stop talking. It means not letting the soul be dragged down by confusion, anger, anxiety. But what does this preparation consist of? God doesn't look at your external works first. Look at the intention with which you do them. You may have little, but if you give it with true love, it is priceless in heaven. Therefore, in the approaching purification, the perfect will not be protected, but the sincere ones. Those who, even after failing, continue to fight to truly live. Mary was clear. Many who pray a lot, but do not forgive, are still exposed. Resentment is a spiritual poison, and in times of darkness, it will be a breach through which evil will enter. Forgiving is not forgetting, it is to free the soul, and whoever has truly forgiven has already won half the spiritual battle. The sacrament of reconciliation is a forgotten medicine. Many elderly people have stopped going to confession out of shame, pride, or fatigue, but confessing is cleaning the house where Mary wants to stay, and a confessed soul is an armored fortress, not as an empty repetition, but as the heartbeat of the soul. Each Hail Mary is a stone placed in the wall that protects you. Each meditated mystery is a lamp lit in your inner night. Maria said, "The soul that prays the rosary with faith is like a star that the enemy cannot extinguish." Do you want to be truly untouchable? Then give it all to him. Your past, your present, your future, your pains, your fears, your children, your dreams. Give it all to Ella. And then, when the time comes, you won't have to run. She will run towards you. Because the Virgin has promised that those consecrated to her Immaculate Heart will be her spiritual property. And no one touches what belongs to Mary. Imagine for a moment the world collapses. Confusion reigns. The media screams. Governments do not provide answers. And you're in your little corner, perhaps with your rosary in hand, maybe with a lit candle, maybe with your weak body, but your strong soul. And at that moment, an inexplicable peace surrounds you. It doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. It is the invisible weapon. It's your soul aligned with heaven. And then you understand. It's not about survival. It's about staying in grace. It's about being on the side of light when darkness demands its place. Dear listening heart, do you want to be among the untouchables? Do you want your home to be a beacon of light when the world is dark? Do you want your children, your grandchildren, your loved ones to see in you a sign of hope? So start today. Don't wait any longer. Be quiet, Razor, consecrate, and let Mary cleanse your soul, as a temple is cleansed before a king's visit. But there is something else, because all this we have revealed leads to a promise that has been given from the beginning, a promise that has not failed and never will. In the next chapter, you will learn about Mary's eternal promise, a message that will change your faith and your destiny. After so much revelation, warning, and preparation, after so many tears, so many testimonies, so many calls to the soul, the Virgin Mary now offers us what she has offered since the first day she appeared in the history of humanity, a promise. And it's not just any promise. It is not a human promise. It is a promise from heaven, a promise that has never failed, and it will never fail. The Virgin has said in different apparitions, Medjugorje, Fatima, Garabandal, La Salette, Lourdes, with different words but with the same root. He who takes refuge in my Immaculate Heart will not be defeated. I will take my faithful children by the hand in the hour of trial. I will be present at the last breath of those who have loved me in life. Ah! What a beauty, what divine tenderness. She doesn't promise that we won't suffer. He doesn't promise that we won't cry, but he promises we won't be alone, and that his presence will be stronger than any storm. Let's think for a moment. How many times in your life have you been afraid and called upon the Virgin? How many times have your tears been collected in the silence of a night? How many times have you felt like giving up, and an image of him sustained you? She's been there. And it will continue to be, because his promise does not depend on you. It's up to her, and she never fails. One of the visionaries of Medjugorje once said, with eyes full of light, "The Virgin is not a symbol. It's not an idea. She is a real, living, present mother. And when she says that she will be, it is because she already is. And do you know what his strongest promise is? May her Immaculate Heart triumph, no matter how dark the world gets. It doesn't matter how many fall, how many get cold, how many are lost. In the end, love will win. In the end, purity will be light. In the end, Maria will triumph. And that triumph will not only be global, it will also be personal. It will be yours if you join her. Imagine it in the most difficult hour of your life, when the body no longer responds, when your strength runs out, when your eyes close. She will be there, holding your hand, whispering your name, taking you to meet his son. And that is the greatest victory, because all the wars, the catastrophes, the trials, all that will pass, but the soul that lives united to Mary will not pass away. He will live forever. It will shine. It will be a refuge for others, even after you leave. Isn't that what you want most? May your life have eternal meaning. May your soul not be trapped in the worries of the world, but transcend. May it be a light for your children, your grandchildren, your generations. Then don't hesitate. Hold on to his promise. Make it yours. Remember her every day. Engrave it in your heart. Because when fear returns, when the world screams, when the news is dark, when you feel like you can't take it anymore, remember this: I am your mother, and I will be with you until the end and beyond. And now that you know this eternal promise, that you have felt the warmth of his love, there is only one final question left. Where does the unbreakable dwell? Is there a place, an invisible point, where neither evil, nor death, nor pain can ever touch you? The answer will be the final key to this great spiritual awakening. Don't go. What you are about to hear will close the circle of everything revealed. Everything you have heard so far, the revelations, the signs, the testimonies, the warnings, the refuges, leads to one question: where does the unbreakable dwell? Because if everything is going to fall, if the earth shakes, if the world breaks, if human powers fail, is there anything that doesn't break? Is there anything that does not corrupt, that does not disappear, that does not become extinct? Yes, there is. And it's not hidden in a geographical location. It is not found in a vault, nor on a secret mountain, nor even in a stone church. The unbreakable dwells in the heart of God. And that heart has the face of a mother. The Virgin Mary is the purest reflection of immutable love. She is the eternal echo of a tenderness that never fades. She is the ark that does not sink, the shelter that does not age, the door that is always open. And when everything passes, because it will pass, when time stops, when the world falls silent, only three things will remain: the soul that you were, the love you gave, the bond you formed with her. That bow is the final key. Many have sought salvation in complicated doctrines, in occult theories, in prophetic calculations. Others have run after miracles, signs, promises of security. And yes, heaven has spoken. Yes, there are events coming up. Yes, there are safe havens. But Mary never tired of repeating, the only place where you will be truly safe, it is in the heart of my Son, and I am the door that leads to him. And that door is open now. Do you understand? You don't need to understand everything. You just need to surrender, as a child, as an old man, as a soul, as a son. Maria said, "He lives in my heart, and when everything else falls away, you will remain." Because the unbreakable is not what resists the wind. It is what lives in the root of love. And Mary is that root, in the grandfather who prays alone every evening with a lit candle, in the widow who offers her solitude for the conversion of sinners, in the grandmother who teaches her grandson to cross himself with tenderness, in the sick person who silently unites his pain with that of Christ, in you, if today you decide to live in her. And if you do it, if you consecrate your soul, your house, your heart to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, then there will be no more reason to fear. Because even if the sky darkens, even if the seas rise, even if the world shakes, you will not fall. Because you will not be in the world, you will be in my heart, said the Virgin. Thus ends this journey. But really, it's a start. Because now you know, now you have heard, and what you have heard transforms you. Don't let this remain just words. Don't put out this flame. Take a break. Close your eyes and tell her, Mother, here I am. Make me a refuge. Make me an instrument. Make me an unbreakable soul. And she will, I promise you, because his promise never fails.